What if I told you that the very struggles you're facing right now, the patterns that seem to repeat in your family generation after generation, aren't actually punishments, but invitations? Invitations to become the hero of your own story and break chains that have bound your lineage for decades, maybe even centuries. Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist who revolutionized our understanding of the human psyche, discovered something profound about family patterns. He said the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of its parents. But here's what most people don't realize. Some of us aren't here to carry that burden, we're here to shatter it completely. In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal 8 unmistakable signs that you're not just another victim of generational trauma, but the chosen one in your family line, the one destined to break the cycle. And by the end of this you'll understand why your struggles have been so intense, why you felt so different, and most importantly, why you have the power to change everything. But first let me ask you something that might shake you to your core. Have you ever wondered why certain family patterns seem to follow you like a shadow, no matter how hard you try to escape them? Why the same issues that destroyed your parents' relationship somehow creep into yours? Why addiction, depression, financial struggle or emotional unavailability seems to skip like a broken record through your family tree? According to Carl Jung, these aren't coincidences. They're what he called the family unconscious, a deep invisible current of unresolved trauma and unfinished business that flows from one generation to the next, like an underground river. Jung discovered that families carry what he termed complexes, emotional patterns that become autonomous and repeat themselves through bloodlines. He observed that nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parent. But here's where it gets fascinating, and this is something most people never learn about Jung's work. He also discovered that in every family system there emerges what he called the carrier of consciousness. This is the individual who possesses the psychological strength and spiritual awareness to break the unconscious patterns that have enslaved their lineage. You might be that person. In fact, if you're listening to this right now feeling a deep resonance with these words, there's a very high probability that you are. So let's dive deep into these 8 signs. But I want you to listen carefully because I'm going to share something toward the end that will completely change how you see your role in your family, and it's something Carl Jung discovered that most therapists today still don't fully understand. Sign 1: you're the different one in your family. Have you always felt like you were adopted even when you know you weren't? Like you came from a different planet and somehow ended up in this family by some cosmic mistake? Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. But for those destined to break generational curses, being who you are often means being completely different from everyone else in your family tree. This isn't just about having different interests or career choices. This goes much deeper. You might find yourself questioning family traditions that everyone else follows blindly, feeling physically uncomfortable at family gatherings, having completely different values around money, relationships or success, being the only one who sees the dysfunction that others call normal, experiencing an almost allergic reaction to the family's way of doing things. According to Carl Jung's analytical psychology, this differentiation isn't accidental. He discovered that the individual has always had to struggle not to be overwhelmed by the tribe. In families carrying generational trauma, someone has to be different enough to see the patterns clearly. Jung observed that the person destined to break family curses often experiences what he called alienation from the collective. You don't fit in because you're not supposed to. Your role isn't to blend in, it's to break out. Think about the story of the ugly duckling. The duckling wasn't actually ugly, it was a swan trying to fit in with ducks. That's exactly what's happening to you. You're not broken or wrong, you're just a different species altogether. This alienation serves a crucial purpose. Carl Jung discovered that your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakens? Your differentness forces you to look inward to develop the inner strength and clarity needed to break generational patterns. But here's what's really happening at a deeper level. Sign 2: you're hyper-aware of family dysfunction. While everyone else in your family seems to live in a fog of denial, you see everything with painful clarity. You're the one who notices the addiction that everyone pretends isn't there. You're the one who feels the tension that others claim doesn't exist. You're the one who remembers the fights that everyone else conveniently forgets. This isn't a curse, it's a gift, though it certainly doesn't feel like one. Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But for generational curse breakers, this awareness extends beyond personal understanding to family system recognition. Jung discovered that families develop what he called collective amnesia around their trauma. It's a psychological defense mechanism, where painful truths get buried in the family unconscious. But someone in the system has to stay awake. Someone has to be the witness that someone is you. According to Carl Jung's research on family systems, the person destined to break generational patterns often develops what he termed hypervigilant consciousness. You're not paranoid, you're psychologically evolved. Your nervous system is wired to detect dysfunction because your soul's mission is to heal it. But here's something that will blow your mind. Jung discovered that this hyper-awareness often skips generations. You might have more in common with a great-grandparent you never met than with your own parents. The consciousness awakening often emerges every 2 or 3 generations, like a spiritual inheritance waiting for the right person to claim it. This is why you might feel like you have old soul energy, or why people often tell you that you're wise beyond your years. You're carrying the accumulated wisdom of your entire lineage, even the parts that were forgotten or suppressed. Sign 3. You experience intense spiritual awakening early in life. Did you have experiences as a child that others couldn't understand? Dreams that felt more real than reality, a sense of knowing things you had no logical way of knowing. A feeling that you were connected to something much larger than your immediate family or circumstances. Carl Jung discovered that the meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But for those destined to break generational curses, the most important meeting is often with your own soul, and it usually happens early. Jung observed that individuals who carry the responsibility of healing ancestral patterns often experience what he called early individuation. This is a psychological process where you begin separating your authentic self from your family's unconscious patterns much earlier than typical. These spiritual awakenings serve a crucial purpose. According to Carl Jung, your vision becomes clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams? Who looks inside awakes? The spiritual awakening is your psyche's way of preparing you for the monumental task ahead. But here's what's really happening. These mystical experiences aren't just personal spiritual development. Jung discovered that they're actually downloads of what he called archetypal energy, the collective wisdom of your entire ancestral line flowing through you. You're not just having a spiritual awakening, you're becoming a conduit for healing that extends backward and forward through time. Your connection to the divine is actually your family's connection to the divine. Finally finding someone strong enough to handle the voltage. This is why the awakening can feel so intense, so overwhelming at times. You're not just processing your own stuff, you're processing centuries of unresolved family karma. And this leads us to something even more remarkable. But first let me show you the 4th sign, because this is where most people start to understand the true magnitude of their mission. Sign 4. You face extreme resistance when trying to change. Every time you try to break a family pattern, does it feel like the entire universe conspires against you? When you attempt to live differently, do family members suddenly become hostile, guilty, or manipulative? Do you find yourself facing obstacles that seem almost supernatural in their timing and intensity? This isn't your imagination, and it's not a sign that you're on the wrong path. According to Carl Jung, this is exactly what should happen. Jung discovered what he called the shadow of the family system. He observed that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. When someone in a family begins to heal generational patterns, the entire system will unconsciously resist because it threatens the familiar dysfunction that everyone has organized their identity around. Carl Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But for families, the most terrifying thing is when someone breaks the unconscious agreements that have kept everyone locked in familiar suffering. Think of your family system like a mobile hanging over a baby's crib. When one piece moves, everything else has to shift to maintain balance. When you change, everyone else has to either evolve or increase their resistance to keep things the same. This resistance isn't personal, even though it feels deeply personal. According to Carl Jung's research, families will unconsciously sabotage the very person who's trying to heal them because healing requires everyone to face the pain they've been avoiding for generations. Jung observed that the family unconscious has a life of its own, and it will fight for its survival. Just like any living organism, your attempts to break free threaten the system's homeostasis, so it responds with what feels like an immune system attack. But here's the reframe that changes everything. This resistance is actually proof that you're succeeding. The intensity of the pushback is proportional to the importance of your mission. The harder it gets, the closer you are to breakthrough. Carl Jung discovered that the greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can only be outgrown. Your family can't solve their patterns, they can only be outgrown, and you're the one doing the growing. Sign 5. You have prophetic dreams or visions about family members. Do you dream about relatives you've never met? Have visions of family events that happened before you were born? Wake up with knowledge about family secrets that no one ever told you. Experience dreams where deceased family members give you messages or warnings. Carl Jung would tell you that these aren't just dreams, they're communications from what he called the collective unconscious of your family system. Jung discovered that the dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. But for those destined to break generational curses, dreams become something more. They become a direct line to the family's unresolved trauma and unfulfilled destiny. According to Carl Jung's dream analysis work, individuals who carry the healing mission for their lineage often experience what he termed archetypal dreams. These dreams contain symbols, images, and messages that connect you to your family's deeper story, the story that conscious memory has forgotten. Here's something most people don't know about Jung's work. He discovered that trauma and unfinished